morning. How is everybody this morning? Yay, we should do the little Go Pack Go thing, so wake you guys up. So we're happy to have you here today to have Garrison Cummings from the Green Bay Packers presenting to us. This is Social Media Breakfast Madison. How many of you is it your first time here today? Yay. How many of you been here since the first one? Nice. Our focus is education, so learning about social media through presentations, panel discussions, and case studies, and of course the networking that you guys have been doing already. Bringing together marketers, PR professionals, students, entrepreneurs, and social media enthusiasts over breakfast, and also the coffee. We meet every month on the third Wednesday of the month at various locations. If you are interested or know of a good place to host, please let us know. You can find anybody wearing these shirts today, and we can help you. If you would like to sponsor us, please let us know as well. Or if you have ideas for speakers, or you would like to contribute to be on a committee or speak to any of our board members for details on these. Our board members, so we have Bill Hurley. Bill, where are you? He's back in the back waving. He's got a sweatshirt on today. He is our website guru. Krista is sitting right over here in front of her computer tweeting away. She's our Twitter and social media person. I am Emily. I am the CPA, the accountant for the organization. We have Tyler. Tyler's back in the back. He is kind of our go-to guy for everything. Jeff Powers is busy hooking up the AV or getting his camera ready. He's our camera person. Lance is walking back here. He helps us with all of our food, and he's a sponsorship and making sure that everything goes smoothly. Renee is back there. She's responsible for the Eventbrite, so making sure that everybody gets their invitations. All right, Tony was not able to be with us. He's our president and our fearless leader. And Mike Walsh is out on his adventures right now. He is also responsible for our Facebook and social media. And Bob is over here taking pictures like crazy, so you might find him catching you in a picture somewhere. So if you want to follow us, you can go to our website, SMBMad.org. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, SlideShare, TinyURL, YouTube, and we have email address of smbmad@gmail.com. Next month, on April 16th, we have Caitlin Moyer from the Brewers that is going to be with us. On May 21st, we have Christopher Parr from TDS. And on the 18th, we will have Mike Walsh speaking to us about his Flight for Sight initiative that he is doing right now. And also, just a reminder, Caitlin Moyer would love for you to tweet her any topics that you want to know about social media, what you want her to speak about, or any questions you may have that you want her to answer. Other events, on April 8th, there is the AMA is sponsoring No Excuses Marketing, which demonstrates value and drive results, the 6th Annual Madison Marketing Conference. Anybody know anything about location? Want to talk about it? Go for it. So it's at the Alliant Energy Exhibition Hall. You can go to their website, amamadison.org/conference for more information. And today's presentation is using a social media game plan and analytics to survive being punched in the face. Brought to you by, and here are our sponsors. We have Madison Marriott West, AmFam, Charter Business, AdPress, Professional Direction, Pure Oxygen, Talent Accounting Services, Axley Law Firm, Subtle Strauss, Geekazine, I can't read that one, Badger Graphic Systems, and Melissa Carlson. And our hashtag for today, as most of you know, is SMBMad. And our presenter today is Garrison Cummings. He's a digital manager for the Green Bay Packers. And his presentation using a social media game plan and analytics to survive being punched in the face. So come on up. Let's welcome him.
All right, it's great to be here in Madison today to really talk about social media and analytics. I'm Garrison Cummings. I've been with the Green Bay Packers for 5 seasons, and it's been a fantastic ride so far. We've had a Super Bowl in there, we've had some NFC North championships, but really what's been exciting for me is to see the transformation that our digital presence has had over the past 5 years. When we talk about social media, people get really excited. Now, when I bring in the topic of analytics, I kind of start losing people. So the reason for today's presentation is for all of our social media posts, we usually try to have a hook. And my hook was using a social media game plan and analytics to survive being punched in the face. Now, it's an interesting analogy, but I promise you this analogy will make sense as we go on through today. So as we started the Packers Media Group about 3 seasons ago, we really had to understand, well, what were our goals? Well, our football team has the ultimate goal every year, and that's to win championships. But what were going to be the goals for social media and our digital platform of Packers.com? Well, as we talked to key stakeholders throughout the organization, and I'm sure this is the same in every organization, there are goals that each one of these stakeholders want to get, whether it be merchandise sales, whether it be leads for suite sales, whether it be build awareness for community events, and really growing the fan base and making a stronger connection to the fans. So as we started to identify these goals and really try to articulate our digital strategy and social media strategy, we really had to start talking about business objectives. Now, business objectives in our world are really how we can align, how can we achieve those goals. And for us, the biggest objective that we had was increase audience reach and depth. So when we started looking at this business objective and increasing audience reach and depth, we really wanted to say, well, how do all of our posts, how does all of our content relate to that business objective? And before we did that, we did posts. We really said, well, this is a great post, let's put it up. It got really good likes. But what we didn't really articulate at that point was how this post, whether on Twitter or on Facebook, did that build awareness? Was this to drive click-throughs or visits to our site, to the pro shop? Was it to drive engagement? Was it to create some sort of action on behalf of our audience? And once we started doing that, we really began saying, all right, how do all these posts roll up? And if we don't really have an objective to it, then what's the point? And really, I would say for the majority of the posts, and I'm sure everyone has this, they do line up to some sort of objective, whether it be customer service, whether it be driving clicks to the website. So once we did that, now it comes into, well, how do we plan our calendar, our social media calendar? Well, for the Packers, it's pretty easy. We have a schedule that's set by the NFL. We have a schedule release, we have the draft, we have the opening of training camp, and game days. So when we start articulating our strategy and how we're going to be communicating with our fans and what we're going to be doing, we really come together as a team and start thinking, okay, this is draft. So how are we going to build awareness moving up to the draft? How are we going to engage fans, maybe drive some business objectives of either visits to our site or monetization opportunities through the pro shop? And then how do we support that afterwards, and really engage the community afterwards of introducing the players to our fan base. And Honestly, this is probably my favorite time to do my job. Is we get our team together, internet coordinator, our content developer, our director, and we really just sit in and kind of brainstorm and really take this tent pole and really try to understand what are all the types of situations or types of posts, type of content that could come up. Now, what's interesting when you are doing a live event, it doesn't always go to plan. So we may, let's say for draft, we're saying, all right, first round draft pick, we're going to have, a shot from Radio City Hall, where we're going to try to, show, hey, this is our number one pick, introduce it. Well, that's great, but then all of a sudden we trade out of the first round, and all of a sudden that entire plan is shot. And it's good because, you have to be nimble. But the idea is that when we start planning and we start planning around this tentpole event, it allows us to have so many different types of content that we can plug and play. So if it doesn't necessarily go according to plan, we can make adjustments. So when we talk about these large tentpole events, I know not everyone is going to have these, but understanding, like, whether it be new product launch, whether it be for a pro shop, whether it be kind of building awareness for our tailgate tour, we have a playbook. And this really came into play this past weekend when on Saturday morning I'm watching my kids' swimming lessons in basically a basement at the YMCA, and all of a sudden I got a little bit of a signal that I think we signed Julius Peppers. And it's like, okay, did we not? And then all of a sudden it's, well, we have a playbook already, which is do the announcement, really try to find some content, and develop either a story, photo gallery, and really try to find a connection with fans. So even though we do these tentpole events, it really provides a template for us throughout the season and for any type of event that comes in place. The other thing that, and I think is really pertinent is when we talk about campaigns, and this is something that my director, Joe Malcheski, really emphasized when we came in. How can we be holistic to our existing campaigns? So if the pro shop just recently did a St. Patrick's Day campaign with their product, and they were sending out emails, it was featured on the site, it was featured on our site, and we didn't really think of, well, how does this play out in social? Well, we already have all the assets ready. We have the idea of what the pro shop is trying to do. So we were thinking, how can we build off this campaign? And how can we think holistically? Because we have a great web presence, we have the emails going out, and what are we going to do on social? So what we did, we used our Packers Everywhere platform, and we just asked for user-generated content. Who's wearing their Packers green this St. Patrick's Day? And we got some really great responses. We got responses from Ireland, people that have traveled over to Ireland that show their Packers flag. And, we started to build awareness for this, and we got people engaged, and, we did see, maybe not directly, but somewhat of a correlation of increase in visits to the pro shop and people becoming aware of that. Now, there's other instances that, we look to, well, what's happening in the stadium, right? So we have this really great event that happens every home game, which is Operation Fan Mail that WPS sponsors. And what's great about this, it's a great reaction in stadium. And one of my colleagues, just said, well, why don't we bring this out on digital? Why don't we show this on social? Why don't we recognize military that are serving overseas? And what is great is that we get so much of this user-generated content from people serving overseas that they find they're connected to our team, and they love sharing that passion that they have. And when we post these pictures, the engagement rates are just astounding. We have high likes, we have really high counting metrics on those posts. But what's great is it creates more people that are sending in their photos and wanting to tell their story. And I think that's really important because, if we didn't really look to what's already happening and really trying to understand how we can be holistic in our approach, we would be reinventing the wheel every time. And it's like, well, that's a great series. Well, what are we going to do next? So just looking to our existing calendar throughout the organization really helps us with social media. So the next area when we are planning and as we are developing our game plan is really thinking about, well, what types of fans are we talking to? Now, we can't just blanket that, we have a post on Julius Peppers, it's going to resound amazingly to every single type of our fan. We have hardcore fans that really want to know roster updates, injury updates, what are the inactives on game day, and really, just like this photo, they're checking their feeds, they're checking everything so that they may make adjustments to their fantasy football league or fantasy football team, or they just want to be in the know. Well, when we talk about that sort of fan, we want to make sure that we are positioning that content correctly. And then the other areas is we have casual fans that love the Packers, but couldn't tell you beyond the top players. And some people are just, I grew up being a Packers fan. I love watching the Packers. It's on my Sundays. This is what I love to do. So what content do we have for that type of audience? And then there's another audience that really likes individual players. So when Eddie Lacy was drafted, all of a sudden we saw a spike in visits on our website from Alabama. And, we made the correlation, well, Alabama fans are kind of carrying over. Well, as we start looking at players and trying to, promote them and really, give them exposure to our fan base, we begin to understand, like, some fans want to get to know this and really want to support the player, they want to support the team, or they really just want to know the inner workings of the organization. And I really believe that this applies universally. So when you're talking about personas in, maybe something outside of football and outside of sport, there are probably fans that are your social media followers that are looking for customer service. They have a problem with the product and they want to be able to do this. So what is the strategy for that? Some people are a brand advocate. Now, I love Starbucks and I love Evernote. They don't pay me to, say anything about them, but I just love their products. And I talk to my coworkers about how much I love Evernote. And they're like, oh God, this guy's a Evernote freak. But, I love it, in Starbucks. I make sure that they deliver on their brand promise daily. And, these are, I'm an advocate that, so how are you engaging with those people? And then, some people are a supporter of a cause. Some people will become very active for a specific event. And, well, how are you engaging with them? And how are you driving them up the ladder of engagement? I think is really important. So as we kind of talk about aligning content to personas, there's also the idea of prioritizing for your audience. Now, the fact is that we live in a very instantaneous world in sport. Things happen and people want to know. And when you think about these personas, like how do you prioritize what content or what type of social media strategy campaign you're going to give to them? So when I talk about on game day, we have an inactive list. Well, it does really great on Twitter because we find that some of our hardcore, the people that really want to know the updates very frequently are on Twitter. So we put that out there and we get really great engagement on that. We get very high conversion rates, which is click-throughs to our website on that. Now on Facebook, it doesn't really go. Now we find on game day there is more of a, people want to feel like they're behind the scenes. So we do a lot of photos that may, from field level. We'll really talk about, are you ready for the game? and we get a lot of engagement that way. So depending upon how your content, well, the events that you're in, I think it really makes a difference of how you decide when to place what post, what content to the audience. And, and I think this is really evident too after the game. When we win, fans already know the score. They just want to celebrate the fact that we won. And, we really try to make that connection of victory, yes, and I think we probably had no better engagement than what we had in the last game of the season, when, we had that final drive, and people just were excited. They wanted to talk about it. They wanted to celebrate in that. And by putting out posts that supported that was great. And then on the flip side, when we lose, fans want to, kind of commiserate together. They want to be able to say, okay, we didn't get it done. What are we going to do next time to get that victory? So that's when our content may go more towards, watch the live press conference of Coach McCarthy. What is the articles, talking about the game. We put a little bit more, there's more emphasis on that, because at that point, fans are more wanting to understand, well, why? Why did we lose? And then, like I said, on the flip side, when we win, they just want to celebrate. So, we really talk about the frequency of the posts at that time. And then really, we talk about building off of previous learnings. I think, when we look at our calendar, we look at the results of last year. We look at what really worked and what may have lost its engagement rates. And so year over year, we try to build off new campaigns. How can we do this? And then also, there's trends in the industry that happen all of a sudden. Last year, as we were going into the season, one of our main goals was to get our content onto the open graph of Facebook. So we created some programs that were game day badge program of I support the Packers this week. So we were, and we got very large engagement, large reach, and we really felt that was good, because when we were just doing posts, our engagement rates, kind of our reach, were beginning to decline. So the fact that we really investigated this and really made a game plan going into the next season really helped. The other part is, there's some posts that do really great in the beginning, but then begin to tail off, as the campaign continues to go. And for us, that's where we really start to take action of, what type of creative do we have? Are we able to make an adjustment to that? Are we able to maybe change the copy to really get a better hook for people? And, is the call to action really clear? So when we talk about building off of previous learning, it's really optimizing our social media campaign. So as I was talking about the planning process that we have, creating this game plan, I really think it's important to understand that these are playbooks that we create, if to continue to use some sport references. These are, depending upon the situation, we may use one area, we may use another. And to be completely honest with you, there are many types of campaigns, many types of posts that never really make it outside of the planning stage. We have the creative done, but depending upon situations, we may never use them. And I think just the nature of social media, you have to be nimble. Well, that's the fun part. Now, the thing is, and as a colleague really likes to tell me, is that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think this is really true when all of a sudden you have a crisis, all of a sudden when you lose your starting quarterback, when you lose every game in November, and your window to the playoffs is beginning to go down. And, the thing is, if we rely just on, hey, here's our campaigns, we're going to continue, well, that's being somewhat disingenuous to the audience that's really participating. And what I believe is the answer is analytics. Now, this is probably the part where I lose a lot of people, so I'll try to keep it a little bit upbeat. But for us, analytics, we really look, every day, every week, every month, what's performing and what's happening. And really, for us, analytics has been a journey, just like our digital presence has. At first we started with the platform metrics of the likes, the comments, the shares. And we've slowly been growing into, I would say, more of a digital analytics mindset, which is understanding KPIs, understanding what are the business value, and then really beginning to tie them all together with some foundational metrics. So I told you about how plans change, campaigns get ripped up when all of a sudden events happen during the season. So just to put it out there, how did analytics help us? Well, it allowed us to identify what worked and what didn't. And again, what happened in the early part of the season that was people were getting excited about didn't working during the season. So how could we identify that and be very quick to make adjustments? What personas were still responding to our content? Well, all of a sudden we had more of a focus on the injury list than we had ever before. So one of the things that we really had to do was during the press conference when they had the injury update, we made sure we did a blog post and get that out right away because people wanted to know, every single day when there was a press conference, what is the status? And again, we had, that injury list was very long, so people wanted to know on many different positions. And then, as this is happening, how are we finding a way to still meet business objectives via social media? When I was talking about increasing audience reach and depth, well, it gets hard when you're losing games. People begin to say, oh, that's great, don't really want to be a part of it. But there were still some personas that were responding and that were still driving even greater interaction and conversions to our site, Packers.com, for visits. So one of the things that I think has been a really great resource for us for understanding social media analytics is this book by John Lovett, Social Media Metric Secrets. And I think when we looked at our analytics platform and kind of our framework in our building, we were doing a lot of these, but John Lovett has a much better way of articulating it than I can. And I think he looks at so many different organizations that there's a lot of things that can apply to you. So how do we go about doing this? Well, we try to measure the big and the small. So when I talk about the small, I'm really talking about the likes, the comments, the favorites, the retweets, the likes on Instagram. These to us are kind of the small. I mean, you need to have these, but really in many ways, it's just a great way to understand the posts. But really what the big and what's really hard as a digital manager or as a social media manager is really understanding how does this relate to business goals and how is this really helping the business? Because at the end of the day, social media is really a way to engage, but also build up brand value, help with customer service, and really being where your customers are, whether it be in the stadium or on the digital platforms that are out there. So just to kind of go through some of the metrics that we look at, we have the counting metrics, and those are the small ones that I was talking about, the ones that I think are just essential that you need. And I'll be honest with you, counting metrics is, if you don't have a platform or a social media management software, it's really hard because what you're doing is spending a lot of time in Excel, spending a lot of time trying to stitch together different numbers, and it's hard. But it's really important to be able to do. Now the outcome metrics, these are the KPIs. These are the key performance indicators that are really able to tell you when things are good and when things are bad. And for me, this is where I spend most of my time as a digital manager, is what's working, what's not, and trying to understand why is it not working. Is it not responding? Is it the time of day? Is it, we're just not reaching that audience anymore? And so to me, these KPIs are ones that you have to develop for your business. And I'll go into a little bit of some of the ones that I use. Now, the other ones are business value metrics. Now, these are ones that I like to say the C-suite really care about, that the key stakeholders in the organization care about. They want to know, well, what is the revenue that's being generated? What are the leads being generated? How is this enhancing our brand awareness? And how is this helping resolve customer service issues? And then for us, it's really about, are we able to have less problems at the gate with some of the security measures? Are we able to help with the ingress and egress of people coming into the stadium? And then really, I think the big one, and this is probably the hardest one, and I'll be honest with you, one that we're continuing to work on, are the foundational metrics. Now, these are metrics that, being able to look across any platform at any time, and being able to say when a new platform comes available, well, how are you going to measure that? And this is being able to kind of create a strategy or create somewhat of metrics that you can stack rank and be able to look across, well, is this successful? And especially if you're aligning to business objectives, you should be able to at least say, well, this is good. So let's go a little bit more into counting metrics. So when I look at counting metrics, like I said, the fans, the followers, the likes, the retweets, the favorites, clicks, and whatever that Facebook is providing, whatever Twitter is providing, Pinterest, so on and so forth. To me, these answer the how much, the how many, the how often, but usually can't tell you if a campaign is really successful. So we may have a post that gets, say, 50,000 likes. And I get really excited and I say, Joan, hey, we have 50,000 likes. Okay, great. Well, what does that mean? So I think that's really one of the things that I learned was, so what? So you got 50,000 likes. Well, so what? What does that mean? But, when you look at each individual post, it does allow you to look at optimizing the content. If all of a sudden one isn't getting it very much, you can say, well, maybe our length was too long. Was our call to action really great? I think when we first started off, we were immersed in counting metrics. And we really were trying to understand, well, this is really doing great, this is not doing great. Well, to be honest with you, once you start aligning these posts into certain objectives, all of a sudden, not every post is equal. Some are really meant to drive engagement. Some are really meant to drive clicks. So trying to say everything is the same didn't really help us. So that's where the outcome metrics really come into play. Now, to me, outcome metrics really give you the goal of understanding where you are in relation to your goals and business objectives. And to me, these are ratios, percentages, averages, anything that can really break things down so that you can compare at a more aggregate level. So I guess the way that I look at this is email, right? So if you are just doing counting metrics and you're saying your email file has grown 100,000 or 20%, and all of a sudden your clicks to your website through the email have grown 20%, and you just look at that gross number, well, it's not really telling you the true story. Your email house file has grown, and your clicks has grown just because you have higher followers. Well, when we look at, as we grow our follower base, likes, comments, and shares are automatically going to go up. So year over year, if I'm just looking at the counting metrics, it's really easy for me to say, wow, I'm growing. But am I really growing? Am I really, driving, the types of activities that I want? So for me, some of the things that we look at is positive to negative feedback. When you look at some of the sentiment that's out there, you can really understand, are you moving in the right direction or not? Well, I'll be honest with you, this is probably one that's really easy for us to understand. When we win, we have really great positive feedback, and when we lose, well, the negative feedback kind of outweighs the positive. But, when we look at other things, what are converters to visitors? What are people that are actually taking the desired action from social versus just coming to our page so that we can understand, is that remaining the same? Is it going down or is it going up? What is the click-through rate? Looking at posts that our business objective is to really drive people to the site, we need to really understand, is that click-through rate continuing to go up or down? And honestly, in November, we were seeing a decline in our click-through rate. So the first things, when I see that that's going down, I need to try to take action. We need to understand, well, why is it going down? Is it the time of day? Is it the type of content? Or do we need to reposition, what's going? Or is the audience really shifting away from Facebook at that time, and are they moving into another channel? And I think that's really important to understand is that, people shift. They may stop, engaging with you, and, you really want to make sure that you're responding, because the last thing people want to see is the same content when they're really not excited about it anymore. The other thing is engagement rate. Likes or favorites, reply rate, clicks to activity, and there's many more. And really, I think, to me, this is where understanding your business objectives and understanding what your goals are with social media are really important, because we developed a lot of our KPIs based upon our business objectives. And, it's not going to be the same for every industry. If you, in my prior experience, I was in e-commerce. So probably one of the big things that I may want to look at is, what is our resolution rate? What is our sentiment rate? What is our share of voice? And what is our kind of brand awareness that's out there? So these are, to me, I think these are probably the most important and ones that I use every day. Now, again, if I were to say, just talk about KPIs all day, most people, especially when I talk to my director, to the VP, and other key stakeholders in the organization, they're going to be, what? Not really sure what you mean by that positive to negative ratio, or what is the click-through rate. So this is where business value metrics really come in. And this is how I really try to gauge is, how is social media contributing to our organizational goals? Again, this, I think, just broadly speaking, this is revenue, market share, customer satisfaction. So when I look at, when we look at some of the key ones, what is the customer lifetime value of signups from social media? Now, you're not going to know the value of a follower. I think, to me, that's really hard. But to understand what is the lifetime value of those people that are taking action and really engaging. What is the earned media generated? When I talk about building awareness for our community events, or let's say a press release, at that point it's really about reach. It's really about what is the earned media. And when we're able to try to stack rank this against other traditional metrics that they're using, I'm now able to talk on the same playing field. Percent of qualified leads. For many instances, especially if we have club seats or suite leads, which is a more intensive process, what are the percent of qualified leads that are coming in versus someone just signing up on the website? Are we really doing a great job of driving these people to our site? And I talk about share of voice. For us, we compete on the field with 32 teams, but we're in 32 different markets. So share of voice can be pretty interesting. But now if I'm, say, on the pro shop, share of voice might be more important, because if we're talking about Packers or Packers merchandise, are they talking about the pro shop? Or are they talking about NFL shop? Are they talking about another store that's carrying that gear? And I think it's important because now you can actually begin to see, as your social media efforts are going, how does that matter? And I think, talking with a colleague of mine, or former colleague of mine, he was really interested in Aaron snowblowers. And one of the things he always was talking about was, well, how is Aaron really being talked about when there's snowfall compared to any other brand? right? And so when he kind of looks at it, it's like, well, are we doing great versus another brand? And when you are able to have that share of voice growing, you know that your social media efforts are working. Now, on the flip side, there may be an instance where the share of voice has grown very heavily, but maybe on negative for one of the competitors. So is that an opportunity now for you to position good content that's out there that can really kind of say like your message? I think the example that I heard at another conference was Chobani, really talks about being natural and being very, having a certain competitive advantage versus other ones. And then when you looked at other competitors of theirs, one may have just been getting slammed because, they're not doing that. Well, creating a campaign of being natural and kind of celebrating their brand position really has a way of maybe overtaking some of that negative that may be happening at one of the competitors. And then really customer or fan in our case, acquisition growth. So how are we actually bringing more people into the fold, and is it growing at certain rates? And these are all great metrics, but it's really important to put these to goals. Because again, if we're saying customer lifetime value, what do we actually need for it to be in order to be profitable? What is the goal of that? Because social media in many instances isn't free. You have a staff, you have software, you have different types of creative costs that may go along with it. So if your customer lifetime value isn't going in the right direction, what are you doing to really showcase that? The other area too is maybe even cost reduction. It doesn't have to be just revenue growth. It doesn't have to be percent leads, but it also might be how are you saving on the time of people calling in to guest relations or calling into your customer service center, and what is that reduction in cost actually costing you? Because now you're able to engage on a much larger scale. And then here's the foundational metrics. Now these are metrics that will be able to persist over all channels, existing or new. And I think this is really important. When we look at the interaction activity of users, how are your stated conversions versus activity really going? When we look at engagement, now Facebook does a really good job of giving social media managers or practitioners the engagement rate, but Twitter doesn't necessarily. So how do you actually begin to look at all activity that's associated with these posts, and how can you begin to benchmark them? Because, again, not every social media platform is going to be providing that. And so when you are able to really get a common denominator across all platforms, whether it be on your blogs, whether it be the comments on your blogs, what is that rate versus the interaction on Instagram, or engagement on Instagram, to be able to say this is where it's at versus the audience size, I think is really important. And then the influence. What is the influence of people sharing your content? What is that virality rate that is really happening? And again, your fans or your customers are really engaging with you on all these platforms. So how are they doing that? Are they, on Instagram, are they sharing it? Are they, liking it? And, how is this influencing your message, across? And how are people beginning to talk about that message, in social media channels? And then advocates, in really being able to, I think this is probably one area that I think continues to grow for us, and I think for many people, is identifying your top advocates. So if you have an advocate on Twitter, what is your advocate on Facebook? How do you measure that? Because again, it might not be on the number of followers. It might be the type of positive sentiment that they're providing for you in the volume that they're doing it. Again, how are you looking at this across all the channels? And then really impact. How is this really taking your stated business objectives and looking at the ratio between interaction and engagement? And again, when XYZ new social media platform comes out at next year's South by Southwest, what are you, how are you going to, engage with that? And again, I think this is the big when we talk about the metrics, but this is also the hardest one. And I really think that when you take the time to understand your business objectives, what your team's objectives are, just being able to do this really helps everyone understand what you're doing with social media. So, warning. When I talk about analytics, I think it's really important to speak the same language. Now, if I talk, again, like click-through rates, all the minutia of social media, executives, my director, kind of gets lost. I kind of get, the type of impact of people like, all right, this is great. Can we move on? Can we get done with this? So I think understanding how you're able to tell a story, and I think when we talk about analytics, I think the biggest trend that I hear a lot is being an analytics storyteller, being a storyteller with the data, because you're only as good as how you can communicate the results. And to me, being able to frame this up into more of a story, rather than saying, hey, we grew our Facebook followers by 15% today. What's more engaging is, we grew our fan base by 15%, but this new growth has really resulted in more brand awareness for us. They've shared more posts. Our growth has shared more posts. We have more contributors to our content. We're getting more conversions to our site. Being able to tell that story and, in a way, being almost like a journalist in these numbers, I think, is really important. So, I told you that the analogy of how do you use a social media game plan and analytics to survive being punched in the face. I think this is where you can kind of understand. Now, I have to go back a little bit in time and talk about how we started off. Again, we started off with counting metrics. Now, thankfully, when we started the Packers Media Group, we were just off a Super Bowl win. We went 15-1, and we didn't really have to worry about these types of KPIs that I'm talking about today. Because, to be honest with you, things were just going great. It's gravy. The sun is shining, and things are, we didn't have to do a lot. But as a social media manager or a digital manager, it's when the times get tough, when things aren't growing at the same rate as they were, that's when you really have to start understanding, how am I going to drive this? And that's, again, where the key performance indicators come in. So, this year, I think, really exemplifies what we did well with analytics. So when we lost our starting quarterback, when we didn't win a game in November, when the injury list was growing and the playoff window was beginning to decline, we really need to start taking action, because our engagement, some of the posts that we were doing great in the beginning of the year started really stinking, in November. So, what did we do? We started testing. And again, I think with social media, you can't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid to try something new. So, we tried this quote series. Well, we weren't really sure, for us, I'll be honest with you, my goal was to get engagement. Well, that didn't really happen. We thought, if we were able to take a quote from the locker room, a quote from Mike McCarthy, after the game in January, we were going to really get some great likes, engagement. We only put a link on there to be able to say, relive it. We didn't really think that would be the primary purpose. But what this quote series did was it drew 115% higher average click-through rate than anything else that we were doing at the time. And to be honest with you, I didn't know. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. But, and then when I said our goal was to get higher like rate, well, on average, this like rate was less than some of our other posts that were happening. And we were getting average engagement. So if we were just to look at counting metrics, we probably wouldn't have gone forward with this type of series for next year. Now, we definitely will be using this to be able to drive that business objective of driving more visits to our site, because fans really gravitated towards that click-through. Now, one thing that we were able to do that continued throughout November was that the excitement for the game never ceased. And the result on these are just amazing, is that no matter what the situation was in November, and even though this is a picture of December, the average post had a 238% higher engagement rate than other posts. So what this was really telling us is that it didn't matter what was really happening on the field. People were still very excited about the Green Bay Packers. They were excited about the game. They were ready to sit down on Sunday and watch the game. They didn't really know if we were going to win, but they were ready for game day. And to us, it's amazing to be able to see this continue to have such high engagement rates versus anything else that we're doing. So the result of this is that we created more exciting posts of, are you supporting the Packers this weekend? Are you ready for game day? What are you doing on game day? Really talking about the idea that game day, again, is still that tentpole event, but it's really important that people don't look at the individual players weren't resonating at that point, especially because they were wondering when Aaron Rodgers was going to be back. The other thing is, when we talked about trying to not reinvent, align to existing campaigns, we still had such a great response to Operation Fan Mail in the stadium. And what we thought, let's try, getting some of this content in November. And what we did, as you can see, people were sending in their photos of them stationed overseas, with Packers flags. And again, the engagement was just fantastic. A 40% higher like rate than other posts that were out there. A 57% engagement rate, on all the types of activities. And, we still saw a large increase in that kind of brand awareness for our Packers fans. And the other one that we did in November was embedding links. Now, we started testing this out, and when Facebook really did something new, and what we tried is that we thought, well, our links in the past haven't got really great engagement rates. They really haven't gotten really great click-through rates, but let's try it. Again, not being afraid to fail, I think, is really one of the most important things in social media. So what happened? We had a 35% higher click-through rate on rollout. We didn't have any drop in engagement in our engagement metrics, and we really, again, holistically, this is about driving people to understand, again, that game day experience, and this was about tailgate recipes. So people would go to Packers Everywhere and actually see recipes that were submitted by fans. And again, that idea that we were identifying what was working at that time really allowed us to have one of our best Novembers digitally and even socially on metrics-wise than we had in the prior season when we were winning, because we were able to take our playbook and really begin to shift for the situation that was in front of us. So, kind of what is the future? I'm going to a conference next week, and I think this is the first time I've seen so many sessions that are really focused on social media analytics. And I truly believe that the future, you're going to see many vendors that are going to be presenting solutions to make it easier for social media managers to, identify these KPIs, to be able to go cross-platform, to be able to identify advocates at a much higher rate. And, for us, we use Adobe Social that integrates it immediately into our digital analytics solution. And I know there's Hootsuite that probably does a really great job. There's Buddy Media out there. And you can see this Buddy Media was acquired by Salesforce, I believe, and I think you're beginning to see this idea of how is social media from an enterprise level really going to roll up to these business objectives. And I think we're going to see that probably continue. And the idea that, social media is just, creating these campaigns, it still will always be there, but the idea that it's driving business results, I think, is going to become more to the forefront. So, what are some of the key takeaways that for you to take with you back to the office? I think is establish goals and business objectives for your social media program. I think this is probably one of the, it's hard because you have to do a lot of legwork up front with the key stakeholders, but it really begins to allow you to look through the lens of business objectives and see, well, how are these posts really driving our organization forward? Know your audience. Listening to the audience, really understanding when they begin to move away from a certain message is really important. And then tailoring your content to personas. Now, again, when that persona that continued to, show themselves in November and in December of they're really excited for game day, well, we really need to make sure that our content was really talking to that persona. When we're talking about the people that we're really excited about, I shouldn't say excited, but really interested in the injury report during press conference, how are you getting that out, immediately? Create a measurement framework. And to me, this has been a work in progress for the last 3 seasons for sure. We're continuing to evolve. We're continuing to really play with metrics and understand how they're rolling up to the business objectives and really informing the key stakeholders how they're actually driving their business. And then be a continuous learner. Facebook seems to be very good at always coming out with a new way of interacting with their user base. Twitter will probably continue to do that. And to be honest, there'll be another platform that comes out. I think being in social media, or digital media for that matter, means that you always have to be a continuous learner and try to identify what is moving the needle now. Because what worked yesterday probably isn't going to work today. So that's all I have. So hopefully when you build a social media game plan, when you use analytics, I really believe that allows you to avoid times of crisis and allow you to survive being punched in the face. So, thank you.